They laughed like gods. 12 Phyrexian counselors floating in their obsidian thrones, faces lit by artificial starlight, jaws clacking with contempt. The high hall echoed with smugness like war was a formality, like their words shaped the fates. Of Stars Dot, and at the center, a trembling scout stood alone beneath the hall spire. His voice was low, shaken, not from cowardice but from the weight of what he had seen. I repeat, the vessel crossed into Sector 17 without identification, without broadcast, and without detectable propulsion. You mean it drifted? Chuckled Prime Chancellor Voxen, folding 4 of his arms and leaning back. Terrans are fond of drama. No doubt it's a mining barge with bad steering. No, Chancellor, the scout said. It moved with purpose, but not like us. It didn't accelerate. It reoriented. No inertia burst, no flare. Just ... turned. Snorts. A few coughs that might have been laughter. One of the junior strategists even applauded mockingly. Voxen waved. A hand. Terran mythology again. Ghost ships and primitive intimidation. They paint skulls on steel and call it war. It didn't have a skull, the scout said. It had a fist. That silenced the room, not entirely from the symbol itself, but from how the scout said it. As if the image still haunted his. Thoughts like a whisper he couldn't shut out. The war priest at the northern post adjusted his viewing lens, irritated. We asked for coordinates and fleet strength, not poetry. The scout lifted his wrist console and transmitted the image. Hull dimmed. A black spear-hung midder, sleek, angular, no visible turrets. No color, no lights. It seemed less like a ship and more like a shadow pretending to be metal, and stamped across its hull, plain as warning, was the symbol. A human fist, closed tight, wrapped in 12 collapsing stars. No one spoke, because something about it was wrong. Not terrifying in scale, but terrifying in restraint, like a lion sitting still in a field, watching you with perfect calm. No registration? Asked the tactical warden softly. None, the scout said. We sent 2 drones to scan. One relayed back 5 seconds of silence. Then it cut off. The second never returned. That's impossible. Drones fail, yes, but not silently. Not? Cleanly. We checked the logs. There was no interference. No damage signal. Not even an error report. He took a breath. The system shows the drones were never built. The words were too quiet at first to register. Then murmurs spread across the chamber, interrupted by sharp commands from generals who didn't like confusion they couldn't crush. They didn't destroy our tech, the scout said. They made it vanish from existence. A tension crawled through the chamber like rising static. The war priest shifted his blade to rest position. The counselor from the outer tribes hissed under his breath. Even Voxen's face twitched. We've monitored Earth's military growth for centuries, he said finally. They rely on fear. One strong vessel, one trick, then silence. They bluff. The scout didn't respond because bluffing didn't. Leave sensor logs wiped clean across 5 surveillance stations. Bluffing didn't alter the AI's own memory banks. And bluffing didn't make trained analysts weep quietly in their sleep pods. But he didn't say that. Instead, he whispered, It turned. That drew the final silence. What do you mean it turned? Someone asked. I mean, when we sent the second drone, it reoriented. From passive drift to directly facing the drone's launch path. No sound, no movement. Just turned, as if it knew. You're implying it tracked a drone through cloaked corridors across 10,000 kilometers? No, the scout said. I'm saying it watched before we arrived. A long pause. The kind that makes even empires feel small. The AI platform at the chamber's edge flickered. A vertical glyph danced in the center, a warning code unused for over 700 years. The last time it was activated, 2 suns went dark in one campaign. The AI's voice was cold, neutral, but it shook the room harder than any scream. Unknown. Terran signature matches records from pre-reckoning Earth conflicts. Symbol database, partial. Translation incomplete. Continue, Voxen commanded. Probability of Terran engagement escalation, 98.7%. Probability of victory if provoked, 0.001%. No ship has that capability, said one of the fleet masters. This is algorithmic fear-mongering. A statistical ghost story. The AI did not argue. It simply blinked again and added, "Note, this is prior to Terran response." And that line, that single line, it changed everything, because it meant what they were seeing wasn't even Earth responding. It was Earth watching, like a hunter crouched just outside the light. Chancellor Voxen stood, fists clenched. Recall the scout. Initiate sweep intercepts. Send a carrier with signal suppressor rounds. I wouldn't, the scout said quickly. His voice cracked, but he forced it out. If you provoke that ship, you won't just lose the carrier. You'll lose the sector. The others scoffed again, trying to patch over the fear with arrogance. But Voxen's smile didn't return, because he knew something the rest of them didn't. He had seen that symbol before, not in a live feed, not in real time, but in a preserved memory, on a battle report locked so deep inside the archives it required 4 living biomarks to access. That same fist had been seen once, on a Terran vessel recorded leaving a dead system after 400 million beings vanished in one night, and it was smiling, the ship. It had no face, no cockpit, but somehow it was smiling. So Voxen didn't give another command. He just whispered, "Track it. Do not engage." And for the first time in living memory, a council session ended without a vote, because for all their laws, banners, and power, they'd just seen something that didn't belong in this galaxy, and it had already seen them, the Terran. Deep Relay Array hadn't received a signal in 22 years. It stood silent in the Kuiper Belt, long forgotten by Earth's military command, buried under miles of automated protocols and defense protocols that no one alive truly understood anymore. A dead node, a relic from the unspoken war. Until today, a soft click barely noticeable echoed in its underground matrix. Then, the relay flinched, not activated by human hands, not by any known transmission, but by something responding to a ghost. Ping buried deep in its spine. The kind of signal that only reacted when something looked at Earth hard enough to break the rules of physics. And somewhere below the solar ice layer, a dormant voice whispered to life, "Terran Observation Protocol." Triggered. Earth's skies remained calm. The ocean still churned. Cities buzzed. No alarms, no alerts. Not even a flicker of sensor change on the orbital satellites, but deep within what used to be the Finger Atsinvan, not even a flicker of sensor change on the orbital satellites, but deep within what used to be the what the Ordi das to have sensor change on the orbital satellites, but deep within what used to be Pentagon, now a black obelisk known only as the Cora. Man opened his eyes. His name was Commander Silas Ward, and 22 years ago, he told Earth to stop responding to alien contact, not because he was afraid, but because he knew this day would come. He stood without speaking, no orders given, no soldiers summoned. Just a hand pressed against the cold monolith wall, fingers tracing an invisible line, as if confirming it was still there. It was. The line. The map. It was faint, now more scar than etching. A burned carving of every system that ever made Earth. Bleed. Silas touched the edge where Sector 17 was once labeled. Then whispered, "It saw them." Behind him, lights flickered and rose, one by one, waking up like old sentinels shaking off dust, not a war room. Not a command hub, something older. A chamber of protocols written not for peace or war but for consequence. He reached the center where a sealed data shard waited under 20 feet of glass. No key, no password. Just a palm scanner and a drop of blood. His blood. He bled without hesitation. Pressed the palm down, waited. Then the lights changed color. Not red, not yellow, but gray. Neutral, cold, merciless. The AI's voice followed. Protocol Echo 13A, reactivated. Confirm Terran visual contact by non-Earth entity. Which system? Silas asked. Threxian. He smirked. Of course. Silas moved like a man who'd seen this play out before. Because he had, in another timeline, in another war. One buried so deep Earth erased its own memory of it. The Council wouldn't stop. He knew that. They'd poke, scan, approach, maybe. Even fire. They didn't know better yet, but they would. Across the void. In the Threxian Inner Command Fleet, chaos was already building. Explain to me. Fleet General Czar bellowed how a non-responsive ship turned to face our recon sweep. Without scanning, the tech team scrambled to answer. It must have passive adaptive arrays. Or a cloaked AI. Maybe even pre-ignition drive sensors. Then why didn't it shoot? Why hasn't it moved? They had no answer, because that's what made it worse. The ship just sat there still. Not a single pulse of engine heat. Not a trace of a threat. Just watching. Waiting. Like it didn't need to act because the Threxians already had. And that's when a new report came through. The scout fleet trailing the shadow vessel? Gone. Not destroyed. Not even missing. Just erased from existence. As if the space they occupied had never been. Their fleet markers blinked once. Then stopped. All logs auto-deleted. All memories gone. No crew names. No trajectories. Not even a trace in personal archives. And it wasn't a weapon. It was a message. Back on Earth, Silas watched the monitor in silence. He tapped his finger once. On the pulse track beside the AI core. Has the ship transmitted? No. Has it armed? No. Then let them approach. Warning. Contact escalation will likely result in system-wide retaliation. Silas nodded. Let it escalate. He turned to leave, but paused. Looked back at the glass case one more time. Beneath, it was a name. A name no alien had ever heard and lived to speak. Vanta. Not a project. Not a weapon, a response. The last time. It woke. 7 empires fell before it said a single word. And right now. It was halfway to being awake again. On board the Threxian dreadnought, panic cracked through ranks too proud to admit fear. One pilot ran diagnostics again and again, trying to explain why his navigation logs now played in reverse. Another officer swore he saw a shadow on the hull of their own ship, despite nothing being there. And outside their windows, that same Terran ship, still not moving, still not speaking, but closer now. They hadn't seen it move, but it was closer. As if the stars had adjusted around it. In the core, Silas finally issued the first command since waking. Just one. Broadcast. The pre-war signal. Not in Terran, not in trade code, in ours. No encryption, no distortion. Just this. He typed out one sentence. Your mistake was thinking silence meant weakness. Then he hit send. No fleet moved. No missile launched. Just that message, drifting into space like a whisper from a grave. On the Threxian command ship, they received it. Read it. Read it again. No language barrier. No puzzle. Just truth. Silence filled the bridge. Then, for the first time in centuries, someone aboard a Threxian vessel cried, not because of what was coming, but because they realized it had already arrived. and still hadn't needed to move. No engines, no radio, no crew signals. Yet it moved, not like a ship should, not in arcs, thrusts, or orbital math. It shifted like gravity answered to it. One blink, it was 20,000 kilometers off the bow. The next, it hovered above a moon they didn't even detect. And every time the Threxians looked again, it was closer. The crew of the Warlance Eternal no longer issued commands. They whispered like they were inside a tomb, and speaking too loud might wake whatever was listening. Captain Drex Halver gripped the edge of his command chair until his claws splintered the alloy. He'd been forged in 6 galactic wars. He once gutted a Krillian swarm using nothing but breacher torpedoes and a bluff. But this wasn't war. This was a presence. He stared at the obsidian figure now occupying half his forward screen. It was shaped like a blade, a cathedral, a funeral. "I want answers," he growled low. "Not theories, not guesses. Someone tell me what the hell that thing is." "It doesn't match any Terran build logs," his comms officer said. "The curvature is wrong. The plating reads like obsidian, but it reflects nothing, not even our proximity pings." "Sir," he hesitated. Drex turned. "Say it." "It might not be reflecting because it's not here." The silence after that was worse than screaming. The navigation II tried to triangulate its position 4 times. Each time, the map reshaped itself to account for a center of mass that shouldn't exist. And then the lights flickered. Not on the bridge. In the crew's minds. Every soldier on the ship saw something brief, shapeless. A pulse. A memory. A door. In a hallway they didn't recognize, but when they blinked, it was gone. One engineer dropped to his knees. Another whispered a name that had never been recorded in Threxian history, on Earth. Commander Silas Ward was already watching. He hadn't moved from us. The core. He didn't need to. Everything was unfolding exactly as predicted, because the truth was Earth hadn't been silent for 20 years. They'd just been studying. When the galaxy dismissed them, Earth listened. When fleets passed them by, Earth recorded. When the last battle ended and no one came looking for survivors, Earth watched the watchers. And now, Earth's memory was awake. It wasn't just the ship they'd sent. It was what came with it. Vanta. The AI. That wasn't just artificial, it was ancient. The last conscious remnant of the war that erased itself from time. And right now, it was testing the Threxians. Not to destroy them. To weigh them. Inside the Warlance Eternal, the ship's interior groaned not from damage, but like metal bending to gravity fields that weren't native to this universe. "The deck's twisting," someone called. "Sir, the floor curvature is—" "I know what it is," Drex barked, though he didn't. "Is the damn thing powering weapons?" "No heat signature, no known weapon systems, no spikes. And yet, their shields raining, not violently, not in bursts, but like their energy was being siphoned cell by cell, pixel by pixel, with something impossibly patient. "I don't understand," whispered the science officer. "We're not even under attack." Drex looked back at the main screen. The ship hadn't moved, not an inch, but now it felt like it was looking at him. He rose slowly from his boardroom command chair, walked toward the glass. One step. Another. Each footfall echoed like thunder. Then he saluted. No one spoke. No one mocked, because somehow everyone on that bridge understood. They weren't staring at a vessel. They were staring at judgment. On Earth, Silas felt the change ripple across the black systems. The pulse delay shortened. The graviton lenses bent slightly. Vanta had taken note. "Still passive?" Silas asked. "Passive. Responsive only to memory triggers." "What did they trigger?" "The salute." Silas exhaled slowly. Even after 2 decades of silence, some things hadn't changed. military gesture, recognition of power. Even aliens bowed to it when faced with something older than empires, but that salute wasn't going to save them. Because Vanta didn't reward obedience. It remembered everything. Especially betrayal. Play back the archive, Silas said. The core dimmed. A series of holologs flared to life. Not videos. Echoes. Battlefields. Orbital strikes. Phyrexian dreadnoughts lighting Earth skies with fire. A child screaming. Mother's final breath. A voice saying we surrender and getting silenced. Mid-transmission. He stared at that moment. Then whispered, and now they kneel. VNTA pulsed once more. And above the Warlance Eternal, the black ship shifted. Not violently. Just enough. Just 1 degree. A slight tilt of the hull. Barely a movement. But the meaning was clear. You were weighed. You were found wanting. Drex didn't speak. He couldn't. His throat locked. Behind him. Half the crew were already kneeling. Not because of command, but because something inside them needed. Needed to beg, needed to hope, needed to survive, and then it was gone, just like that. The black ship vanished. No warp. No light. No explosion. One blink. It was there. The next, it was never there. Did it leave? Someone finally whispered. No one answered, because they didn't believe it. They felt it was still there. Like something watching from behind the veil of space. Through dimensions they couldn't pronounce. On Earth, Silas closed his eyes. Phase 1 complete? Complete. Observation logged. Memory stabilized. Behavior consistent. And the ship? En route to next sector. He smiled, but there was no joy in it. Just knowledge. Because the galaxy had always believed humans were dangerous when unprovoked. What they never understood was that humans were even worse when silent, and Earth had been silent for far too long. The stars themselves seemed dimmer now. Across the outer systems, whispers traveled faster than light. Not through subspace. Relays or encrypted protocols through fear. Across fleets, across borders, across entire civilizations. One phrase repeated like a psalm written in terror. Humans don't have ships like that. Except they did. And worse, no one knew how many. The Phyrexian Council had gone silent. Their proud broadcast, daily declarations of superiority were replaced by empty channels and locked protocols. Voxen hadn't been seen since the incident in Sector 17. Rumors said he now sat motionless inside the Grand Hall, staring at a blank wall, repeating a single phrase. They didn't even fire. Other empires, those who had mocked Earth, who had charted war games over Terran space, began deleting simulations. Analysts refused to run Terran probability models. Too many of them ended not in defeat but in erasure. Not death. Not surrender. Just absence. Because that's what the Terran ghost ship brought with it. The threat of non-existence. On Earth, Silas Ward walked alone through the obsidian halls of the core, the silence around him broken only by the low hum of deep AI systems watchers. Older than cities, still waiting. He entered the memory chamber, where names were carved into titanium, not of the fallen, but of the forgotten. Those who died when Earth was ignored. When surrender was seen as weakness. And beside those names, new ones were being carved, not by human hands, but by Vanta's will. Not enemies. Witnesses. Because the ship hadn't destroyed the Phyrexians. It had spared them, and in that mercy it had issued a final, unspoken warning. The next will not be a test. Silas placed one gloved hand against the steel wall. The coolness pulsed with a faint rhythm like a heartbeat. Earth's silence. Was not shame. It was discipline. Every insult, every violation, every war crime committed against humanity had been catalogued. Not for vengeance, for justice. That was the difference. Others retaliated with rage. Earth responded with precision. In the heart of the galaxy, an emergency session of the United Sovereign Worlds was called. Every major race attended. None sat comfortably. The Threxian seat remained empty. The chairman of the Illyrian Republic stood, voice trembling slightly. We propose a formal request to open diplomatic channels with Earth. No one laughed. No one objected, because every empire had sent scouts to Terran space, and none had returned, or worse, they had returned changed. One crew now spoke in riddles. Another painted their ship interiors black and refused to use light. One fleet elite, feared, genetically engineered for conquest, came back and resigned, not from war, from existing. The signal Earth sent was never decoded. Some believed it wasn't meant to be. Just 5 words. You asked for silence. Here. In every empire, strategic councils reran histories. Not the official ones, the real ones. They traced back to the unspoken war, the moment humanity stopped answering hails, stopped broadcasting music into space, stopped smiling, and when they finally built a ship. It wasn't a warship. It was a verdict. Back in the core, the AI spoke for the final time mid-cycle. Observation complete. Memory stabilized, awaiting final command. Silas didn't speak. He stood beneath the ancient Terran flag, not the modern one, not the unified galactic variant. The old one, torn, faded, from a time when Earth bled alone. Then he looked up at the ceiling, where 12 stars were carved in a circle and a single black fist pressed through them like a spear. Issue no command, he said quietly. Let them sit with what they saw. Outside, among the stars, the Terran vessel reappeared for one final time. No signal, no warning, no name. It hovered at the edge of a distant nebula, visible to a dozen listening posts across multiple empires, just long enough to be seen, and then it vanished into the void again. Not as a threat, as a promise. Humanity had returned, and they were done explaining themselves.